button to override pictures.
Okay, where do I put these?
Underneath the camera.
Right here?
Yeah, see? I'll show you real quickly. See, like it'll come out. That. Like that.
Oop, wrong way. Okay. Think I've
Okay.
try
So
that.
that
Can you do it one more time?
No, you can sit here and she can change it, because you're still on.
We're on?
Yeah.
Oh.
I can turn it.
How to do this.
Yes, I'm talking here to David Fichter, a well-known muralist in Area 4, and who lives on Worcester Street. David,
Hi.
welcome.
Thank you.
How long have you lived in Area 4?
Well, my daughter's 16,
Mhm.
and we moved the month she was born, so that would be 16 years I've lived in
Mhm.
Area 4.
And what are some of the projects that you're working on now?
Well, I'm a mural painter. I travel a lot to paint murals, and I paint murals around here. I just came back from doing a mural in Wayne, Michigan,
Mhm.
which is one of the places where they make Ford cars. It's one part of the car industry there, and I did a big historical mural on the outside of a theater that they have, that the city owns, a movie theater, and it was a big historical mural about the community of Wayne and its people in the past. And I'm currently working on finishing up some projects, but I'm renovating a mural that I did 13 years ago here in Area 4 on the outside of the Harvest Co-op Market.
A very famous mural
Right,
that
it's
everybody
called
knows.
The Potluck,
Mhm.
and it's about Area 4, the people and places in Area 4,
Mhm.
and it's been up for about 13 years. I painted it in 1994, so I've been carefully going through it in places where it needs to be scraped and repainted and touched up, and then I'm going to varnish this weekend. I'm going to varnish the entire mural, and that'll hopefully sustain it and keep it going for another 15
Mhm.
years, something like that. That's kind of every few years like that, you have to do a little bit of renovation, and
Mhm. And what events will take place during
there's a
the
picture of it.
rededication?
It's on the back of the Harvest there, and it's called the Potluck. In the middle is the potluck table, and then around it are people, various Area 4 residents who, well, at least that lived here at the time, sort of partaking of this potluck meal. I mean, it's a symbolic one also.
And can you tell me from start to finish, what is involved in creating a mural? That mural, for example.
Okay, well, that's a good example. Well, first you have to have the idea,
Mhm.
and in this case, I started off with the idea that I wanted to do a mural in my own neighborhood.
Mhm.
I traveled a lot in different parts of the world to paint murals, and I thought, I think that year before that I'd done a big one in Los Angeles,
Mhm.
and I thought, I've never done one right in my own neighborhood, and it would be a great place to do one. And so I applied to the Area 4 Neighborhood Coalition through a special funding source. They're called UDAG grants.
Yes.
To get a small grant to do a mural in Area 4, and I didn't know where I was going to do it. And then I went around. The next step is you got to figure out where you're going to do it, and I looked at a lot of walls, and then I noticed, wow, that's a great wall.
Mhm.
It's on a parking lot, so it's very open. You can see it from far away. It's near Central Square, which is a very busy area, so that's another great thing.
Mhm.
And there's a farmer's market there in the summer and the
Yes.
fall, and so there's all these, and people go through there to get to work, to the subway and stuff. So I
Mhm.
thought, and then I had to get permission from the owner, and then I had to come up with ideas. So I thought, well, it's on a fairly established Harvest Co-op market, and there's a lot of restaurants in the Central Square, and I thought food would be a great theme. So
Mhm.
I used food as a symbol or a metaphor for painting a portrait of this community. It's sort of like, and then so what I did was I kind of turned into an anthropologist, and I went to a whole lot of potlucks in Area 4. In fact,
That was a hard job.
yeah, well, you know,
Somebody had to do it.
somebody had to do it. So I went to potlucks. In fact, I went to a potluck in the Tabernacle Church in the basement. They had their, I think it was a Mother's Day event where the men cooked all the food.
Okay.
So I went there, and one of the things that ended up in the mural is the Pastor Green's, who's the minister there, his potato salad. It was very beautiful. It had potato salad, and it had these radishes brown, they're red, and framed by lettuce. So that's right in the middle of the mural.
Yes. And a lady from my church, Tommy.
Yeah, and the woman who was very beautiful woman, but also beautifully dressed in her native country, I think is Liberia, and she's sort of handing a piece of bread to these hands that you don't see who it is. So leave a little something unknown. So so that's one of the ways that I got my ideas for what it might look like, is what potlucks kind of look like. You usually have a table with all the food, and you have people gathered around. Some people are getting food, some people are talking, just it's kind of a really great mix. So I try to capture that kind of dynamic mix of people, and that's how I designed it. And I looked at art history to see, okay, who's dealt with food and tables. And I looked at Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, and I thought, that won't make sense here because it's too long. It'll just repeat the length of the wall. So I decided my table go into the wall and in perspective. So that's a little bit of it. And then the next thing you do is you prep the wall, you clean it, you put on primer, and then you grid it up. And grid is just a way of enlarging the drawing onto the wall. You put a grid on the wall and a grid on the drawing, and they're proportional, like an inch to a foot. And then you draw it up, and then you paint it. In this case, I involved a number of kids in the area. I did a bunch of workshops at the Fletcher Community School, and I had them take the theme of food in their families and do drawings, and I incorporated those as details into the mural.
Near the top of the mural.
Yeah. And then it was a community mural, so anybody who wanted to could come work on it. I had a couple of students who I hired to work on it, but then volunteers made up the rest of the workforce. So I don't know how many. There was probably about 50 people that worked on it off and on.
So did the original images come from photographs that you took, or come from newspaper photos, or
No,
a
mostly
combination?
mostly when I would go to
drawings?
those potlucks, I would take pictures, or
Okay.
sometimes I would pose people once I had the design.
Yeah.
And then as I was painting it, I actually added more people. And people would come by all the time. They'd say, "Can I be in your mural?" And
Okay.
I asked them where they lived, if they lived in Area 4, because
Yeah.
I was trying to keep it local.
Yes.
Then I would pose them as one of the people and put them in. So it was structured because I had a design, it was all drawn out, but then I would allow the opportunity for sort of spontaneous things to happen. So there were some interesting moments. For example, I'm sorry, the name of the woman escapes me, but one day a woman came by, and I think she was like in her 60s, maybe 70s, and she said, "Can my mother be in the mural?" And I said, "Wow, how old's your mother?" And she was in her 90s. So I said, "Well, if you can bring her out here, and I'll take a picture of her." So she lived on Windsor Street, I think, and the next day she brought her mother, and I photographed her and put her in, and then she died a few years later, and I saw in her obituary they mentioned that she was in the mural.
That's
so.
awesome.
And she has a wonderful face, and I love to paint portraits, and that was one of the highlights was painting her portrait.
And the project you're working on now is exclusively about the history of Area 4, and it's in conjunction with your wife's drama group. Is that
Well,
true?
besides renovating this mural, and by the way, we're going to have the rededication of this mural on October 13th.
Outdoors?
Outdoors, right in
Okay.
front of the mural.
Okay.
And there'll be food supplied by the Harvest Co-op, and there'll be theatrical performances based on the history of Area 4, which is the subject of my next mural, which I'm going to do this coming year, which is going to be history of this neighborhood, which it's a great neighborhood. It has a very rich history.
Yes.
It's the neighborhood that brought in a lot of immigrants from different places. Center of the African American community. In the 19th century, a lot of the abolitionists lived here. On Norfolk Street, there was the Clark brothers who escaped from Kentucky and ended up in here and wrote their stories. And John Clark was the first African American to be elected in the city to elected office. To the Common Council was called then. And the Jewish community was centered here in Area 4. The two synagogues. First, there was one on Columbia Street at the turn of the century, and then later in I think the 30s or 40s, the one on the temple on Tremont Street. So, and then the history of like early groups of immigrants, like for example, there was a huge number of people who came from Barbados, and a number of the churches have sort of a Barbadian flavor or origins. So that's a really interesting history. The first settlement houses, Margaret Fuller House, early settlement house named after and it's the home of Margaret Fuller, was born there. But also even before that, the Cambridge Neighborhood House, which was the first settlement house in the country, even before the one in Chicago, the famous one, settlement. So, I've been investigating this with my partner in this is Monica Raymond, and we're doing a lot of it through oral history interviews. So we've been interviewing people about their experiences here in Area 4 and then transcribing that, and that'll be part of it. And it is in conjunction with the theater. This summer we worked with youth from the Underground Railway's Cambridge Plays Youth, and they interviewed some of the kids interviewed people, and they're going to do a theatrical performance based on that as part of our rededication / unveiling, I guess you want to call it, on October 13th.
Well, thank you so much, David. And if people want to be involved in any of your projects, is there a website or an email they can contact you with?
Well, my website is davidfichter.com, David Fichter, FICHTER.com, and there's ways to get hold of me. You can email me, and from that you can find me.
Wonderful.
And yes, I work with a lot of people. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
I'll take.
They locked him in prison and threw away the key. They say they call it justice, well we'll just wait and see. What had he done? He had done the wrong. He didn't even know what his penalty was. Somewhere and somehow, someone's gonna pay. 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 Yeah! 44OR!
We're here in the studio with some of the members of the band Three Kings.
Aquí estamos en el estudio de CCTV con Marta Gómez.
We're My Little Radio from Boston, Massachusetts.
And we are Big Digits.
And you're watching Bandwidth TV on CCTV.
Les gracias por ver Bandwidth TV.
That's Cambridge, sucker!
Hi, Mom.
Keep watching it. Don't stop watching.